Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition. And today we are going to talk about how do we figure out what works and what doesn't work. How do we figure out how a reality is supposed to work? How do we figure out a reality is aligned? How do we figure out how to align it? How do we learn to align a reality from our highest aspects? And we learn through not doing it correctly. We learn through rearranging a lot of different realities and a lot of different ways and them not working. In a sense, we learn through failure. We have to learn, we learn what works by after doing for so many years things that do not work. And that doesn't feel like the sexy way to start it, but that's how it is, you know? We learned the way to align something on a soul level. We learned how to align something from our highest aspects by continuously aligning things from our human aspect and them not working. So as we dive into this, we have to really be honest with ourselves as to what are we trying to align and why. You know, is there a purpose to aligning this reality to higher consciousness? And I'm saying that in a sense of every reality we have should start out in higher consciousness. And if it is not aligned to higher consciousness when we begin, and I did a whole separate video on that, about how to communicate the reality ahead of time. So I'm not going to get into that here about how to, communicate ahead of time, because when we're in our human aspects and we created all these realities, well, shocker, we didn't communicate anything ahead of time. So they're not aligned. So, okay, what are we going to do now? So we'll go through different phases. We'll have our awakening. We'll have some people have a pre-awakening, some people have a straight awakening, and then we realize we've really trying to been waking up since we were born. Our whole existence has been about waking up. We go through our ascension, and there's so many different phases of ascension. Ascension never ends. We're always in some phase of ascension. It just becomes more energetic than physical after a while, in a sense of how we're clearing. But there is a phase of the process where we have to go and try to align our life. And I'm going to say try first, because we're really not sure what we're doing. We know it's not aligned because we know it's bothering us. We know it's distorted. We know that it doesn't feel right anymore. We're not enjoying the reality anymore. It's very fucked up in a sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why am I even here? I'm supporting all these people. I'm showing up, no one's showing up for me, and I don't know why I'm still here. And when we start to have those awarenesses, those are huge, because that means we've reached a part in our consciousness, we've reached a space where we can start to see on every part of us, feel that this is not aligned. And this doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't know why I'm still here, and I don't want to be here anymore. So what do I do now? How do I figure out what to do? Because we'll watch, you'll hear so many things about, try to align it. But what we try to do is we try to align it from a human aspect, and we're trying to align it on a higher plane, right? We're trying to align it to a higher dimension. And that's when we talk about aligning realities. We're talking about aligning them to a higher dimensional reality. You're trying to take that reality and get into a different timeline with it. But we're not moving that reality up. We're ourselves, our bodies, moving up into a different timeline where that reality is already playing out, but it's sort of a higher version of it. It's a higher budget version of it, in a sense. It's a more enjoyable reality. But the things that'll shift in the reality are not the things that you would have thought would have brought you peace and joy before. And that's where we have to do a lot of trial and error, and a lot of what doesn't work, and a lot of why didn't that work? Why did when I tried to align that, it didn't work? Because in the beginning we try to align stuff from our human aspect. We're trying to figure out, okay, what would make this aligned? Okay, if this person said this one thing, that would align it. Or if this person started showing up. And we start to learn, we start to tinker with these realities that there's an old saying, and a lot of the old sayings we have, a lot of them are rooted in consciousness. They're kind of metaphors within metaphors that, people come around for, a lifetime or a day or a season, or it's something to that effect. I don't really remember what it is, but something to that effect. And what we start to learn is everyone that we picked for certain realities are there for a reason. They're there to show us something. They're there to see if we're going to stand up for ourselves, if we're continuously in a disempowered place with this person. Are we going to finally say that's enough? In a sense, then aligning that reality to where this is not acceptable anymore. And normally when we do a lot of that stuff, sometimes reality crumbles anyway. Because the purpose of that reality was not for us to be empowered in it. The purpose of that reality was us to stand in our power. And once we've done that step, the reality has no purpose anymore. And it dissolves. And that can be a little jarring for us for a while, because we don't understand why that had to happen like that. Why did that dissolve? Why did that have to happen? We're kind of taught from our human, when we listen to different human consciousness material, and that's anything that's driven by human consciousness. I don't care who's driving the bus in that sense. Whether it's a doctor, a therapist, it doesn't matter. If they're operating from a human consciousness and that's where they're pulling their beliefs from, their structure from, then it's still rooted in human consciousness. And it's not going to assist you in aligning something to higher consciousness, because it's a different frequency. It's a different dimension they're working in. We talk about multidimensionality. People are like, well, what does that actually mean? What is multidimensionality? It seems like a simple question, and sometimes someone will ask a simple question and it'll kind of throw me sometimes. I'll be like, that's a good question. Because it's kind of like you can feel what it means when we start to try to find the words to explain it. I know one time someone asked me to explain when I said what's the energetics of the reality, what does that mean? And I remember thinking about that. I really, when someone asked that, I'm like, yeah, what does that mean? I kind of feel like I know what I want to say, but how do I put that into words? What's driving that reality? That's a different way to say the energetics of the reality. What's it based on? What's your drive in it? What's moving it forward? And that's the energy of that reality. And all of our human realities, we base them on human things. So they're built on human things. So then you're trying to kind of shift the whole thing. And we learn that it's very difficult to do unless everyone in the reality wants to shift it, which means you have to have everyone in that reality in a similar consciousness to see that it's not aligned, and to want to align it into such an extent that they're willing to rearrange the whole thing, no matter what that means to them, and to rearrange it to something where, from our human aspect, it might not sound that great. That might not be what I wanted to do there. That might not be what my human would deem as what someone would look at as a successful reality. So even when we try to take the tools that we would have picked up along the way from our human aspect, we have to still remember that it's rooted in human consciousness, and that's a different dimensional consciousness than higher consciousness is. They're not the same. Multidimensionality means we can just see different dimensions. We have the capability to go touch our consciousness with higher dimensions, embody those dimensions, embody that consciousness, anchor that into our body and live that consciousness. But we can't live that consciousness in a reality that's based in human beliefs and human systems without the whole thing shifting into something else. And sometimes when it shifts into something else, we might be the only ones in our reality for a very long time, because no one else is technically in that reality with you, because no one's at that frequency to be with you, in the space you're in the place you're in. And we're by ourselves for a while. But there's also a part of being by ourselves, because if we're never by ourselves, we don't learn to become God consciousness in our reality. We don't learn to be the divine masculine, in a sense, in our reality. We have to do things for ourselves. If we never do something for ourselves, we can't step into our power. Whole point about stepping into our power is doing something for ourselves. It's not to take a back seat to everyone all the time, and never drive our own bus, in a sense. We're always waiting for someone else. So look at the consciousness of what you're pulling from. Look at the consciousness of what you're trying to do. And normally how your human would align it is you're going to do it exactly the opposite way to how your soul would try to align it. Most of the times for me, I found my soul would just close it down. If I looked at it from a higher aspect, looked at everyone in the reality, because that's another thing we start to do when we start trying to align something. We're not looking at it from a human aspect, and which can see this much of the reality. It doesn't have multidimensional capability to look at it. We have to be able to look at it and see everyone in the reality. Our human's going to see just us in that reality. What benefits me? What am I going to get out of this? And if I'm not going to get anything out of this reality more, why am I still here? Now, there's a part of that where we're standing in our power to look at ourselves and see what makes me happy. And that's a huge part of the process for people. Because we never cared about what we were doing to ourselves, in a sense. We never looked at if we were happy. We only looked at kind of everybody else, but we looked at trying to make everybody else happy by sacrificing ourselves. It's still a sacrificial play. It's not rooted in higher consciousness. It's just rooted in a flip side of a distortion, in a sense, of doing everything for ourselves. We're still doing it for ourselves because we don't feel worthy, and we think by doing everything for everybody else and neglecting ourselves, we're then going to feel worthy. It's kind of like, it's just weird loop we get in. So for some people, you might feel like you're in a reality where it's all about you and you want all this stuff out of the reality. And in another reality, you feel like you're just giving everything you have and no one else cares about what you're doing. And partly because we don't care about ourselves. It's the same thing. We can't gain respect in any of these realities because we as human aspects don't respect ourselves. We will compromise for money, love, fame, and success all day long as our human aspect. We will lie, cheat, and steal to get what we want. We will lie, cheat, and steal. When the shit hits the fan, we will go back to our human aspect, and we will see that it's only going to be about us. And that's what our human aspect does. And that's where you can really see when you're trying to rearrange these realities. And what we learn over time is when you're with people in this reality that are predominantly acting from their human aspect, or even if they have the capability to act from a higher aspect and hold that aspect, what happens when it gets rough? What aspect do they turn back into? 9 times out of 10, if someone has a strong human aspect that they are still letting in control here and there, when shit hits the fan, they're going to go to that human aspect, and that's where they're going to go, and they're not going to be able to see anything else. Everyone has to be on board to shift. Everyone has to be on board to align something to another level. It's not something we can do it on our own, in the sense where we can stop our participation in it. We can look at, is this serving me anymore? We can make the hard choices as terminating leases or getting separated from people. We can get divorced. We can change jobs. We can leave jobs. We can change where we live. But we find what aligns the reality for us is the peace we get in the new reality. It's not all the other fluffy things, or maybe I should say the flowery things, the things that we thought we needed to be happy, that were present in that other reality. We just felt like if we had more of them, then it would make us happy. But what we didn't realize was we were utilizing some of that stuff to achieve a feeling of happiness. We were letting that unlock what happiness felt like. But once we unlocked a certain part of it, unlock that phase of that, unlock those codes of happiness, unlock that frequency of happiness, where our body can get to a different vibration where we're embodying in that level, we want something else. That didn't do it anymore, because I can't hold that. Technically I can't hold that level of happiness because my body frequency is too low. So I have to get my body to a different frequency, and there's a lot of different ways we're going to work through doing that, based on what we're putting in our body. But a lot of it's what we put our body through, as far as what realities we're in. That's a big bulk. People will clean up their diets. They will clean up, the water they drink. They will go to the gym. They'll do all the human things to get their body clean. And those things are important. But there are so many other things that we continue to do and put our body through, and negate our feelings on a lot of stuff, and push our feelings down, and not want to deal with realities, and duck and run from realities, and continue to put ourselves in places that don't support us. because we don't really understand how important that body component is. We don't understand we have to lift ourselves out of a reality to get to the next one. We don't understand that yet. So how do we learn how to do it? Is we learn how not to do it. We learn that trying to take something that's built from a human consciousness and try to retrofit higher consciousness in there, it's probably going to dissolve their reality. Now, technically, that's what we're going to be doing anyway. And then we're going to be in a different reality where those people, some of that infrastructure can re-materialize around us again in a different phase, in a different dimension, in a different timeline where we're in a different space. It still might not feel 100% aligned. And that's why when we talk about multidimensional realities, we're also talking about vibrational realities. We're talking about what fits by 10 minutes from now might not fit 10 minutes later. What's going to work a year from now, or what's working now might not work a year from now. It might not work 6 minutes from now. So we really have to be able to pivot and understand, what are we trying to align to? Some people will say it's peace inside. Do you feel peaceful? To me, it's if I feel expanded. And I can feel when I don't feel expanded, but it takes time to figure that out too. What makes you feel expanded? What makes you feel shrink down? When I get agitated, what's burning out my nervous system in a sense, because it's too many distortions in my field, and I'm overcompensating to keep my spin rate at a certain level, my frequency in a sense at a certain place, and this environment's not supporting me. So okay, now why am I putting myself in this environment? Can I shift the entire environment? Can I shift parts of it and stay in those parts of that environment that support me? Can I not shift the whole thing out of respect for other people in the environment? What can I do? And sometimes it's what's in line for me to do now, and what will be in line for me to do, later. Sometimes we know we're kind of buying time in a reality till we can get to the next one. We're kind of buying time till I can get to the next reality, till I can get to the next thing. I'm trying to buy all this time to figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work, what's good for me, what's not good for me. As we continue to go through this stuff, and as we continue to rearrange our realities and align them, a lot of them kind of fade away on their own. We don't have to do anything. They'll sunset out on their own. There are some realities we'll say, hey, I'm gonna, when this is done, I'm not gonna fight the ending of this one. I'm gonna let it just quietly phase out. I'm gonna end it from my highest place. There are some that energetically you just understand that there's no more you can do, and it's time to move on, because staying in that reality is in a sense holding other people back from stepping into their power, because they're going to look to you as the power in that reality. It might mean going somewhere else for a while, or maybe never stepping back into that reality. Closing them out from our highest place, and actually closing them out, if sometimes they'll just kind of close themselves out and fade away, like jobs will end or relationships will end, but they'll end in a way where you feel like there's nothing more you really need to do. Be careful we're not running away, because we'll learn that too, that trying to run away from a reality because we don't want to end it energetically, we're never ending it, because until we can deal with it, we're telling our universe we're not ready. I can't really do that yet, so we're going to tee the reality up again with other people. So technically you're in a different dimension with it, but it's not so much of a higher tick up, where a lot of it's kind of similar. Look at what fuels you. Creation will fuel you in higher dimensional realities. You're going to restructure everything. There won't be a lot of people there. Anyone who's going to tell you that you're going to be in a soul-aligned reality, and there's a zillions of people in this reality with me, and we're all huddled up together, that's not a soul-aligned reality, I'll tell you that. Because your soul needs a lot of space, and you're going to want to be by yourself a lot, and you're not going to want to be around a lot of people all the time. It'll be very small. It'll get very small, and it gets very small, and sometimes it'll be really nobody there until we can discern, who do I bring back in, and we bring it in aligned. For me, it's been easier to just close out everything, which I've been doing over the last few years, than continue to try to retrofit shit that was not going to ever align. And we'll spend a lot of time trying to do that, a lot of time. And then we start to notice, okay, it's not so much the reality screwed, it is, but it's how it all started. It's how this movie started, which is why I'm at this ending where it is, because I started it from a very lack mentality, whatever I was trying to get out of the reality. So now I'm trying to align it and it's not really working. So we learn to create them differently. We really look at who comes in. Can this work? Even if it's someone that is, also deep in their ascension journey and they might want to create something too. If everyone's in a different place in their ascension journey, it's going to be difficult. If everyone has, we talked before about everyone having a different version of what heaven is. If everyone has a different idea of what heaven is, we might not have a common goal to build something. So we really look at how we're building something, and are we building it from our purest aspect? Are we just building another karmic distorted one? And there are some we'll go through until we work off our karmic debt in those realities. But we'll know when it's done, and we'll know when we're hanging on to them, and we'll know when we've tried 100 different ways to try to make it work. And we'll start to learn how to get it to work. How to start from a place that's clean if we cannot realign it in the middle. And I have found that very difficult unless everyone is on the same page with that and everyone is open to what the reality is and to bring it to a higher consciousness reality. And it is something that takes a lot of practice, a lot of hit and misses with your reality. So if you're in that phase where you're hitting and missing a lot and trying to align them and they just feel like, every time we try to align it, you're in that process. You're just learning. You're learning how to align realities. We come into the fifth dimension. We come into that consciousness, not even anchoring it in yet, just hitting that consciousness as a divine child, playing and running around and floating around. And, we'll talk about love and light and everything is just beautiful and the colors are brighter. And this is amazing, this is so great. Then we have to move into our adolescent phase where we start rejecting some of the stuff we see we might have to do. And then we get into where we have to kind of start to kind of put on our big energetic panties and really look at what are we doing here? What are all these realities now? Now I've got to start to sort all this stuff out because I can't keep all these sort of realities it's disrupting me being peaceful. It's disrupting me feeling, in bliss and magic, and it's disrupting all that. I've got so many distortions here. So we get to the phase where we have to really look at stuff. And we have to, when you're in the process of trying to figure it out, that's a big step in the process. Because the more we try to figure it out on how not to do it, then we start to learn how to do it. Because we've learned over time, this is not the way to do it. And we even catch ourselves. Like I'll catch myself when I'm doing it the old way or doing it, I don't want to say an old way, but doing it a way I know is not going to work. And, I'm like, well, maybe I'll try it this way. Sometimes we'll do that too. I know I'll do it if I really want that reality to come in. I might try to compromise on the reality a little bit to get it to come in. But we can know how we feel about it. Are we at peace and excitement when we start the reality, or do we feel something else? Do we feel fear? If I don't start the reality right now, it's not going to start. Do we feel pressure? Do we feel a clock ticking somewhere? Really, really be honest with yourselves when you're starting them and being honest with everyone in the reality about what it's going to be and not letting it fall into what our human would want it to be. And then that's a big one. So, okay. I think that's a good one for today. Keep practicing the art of intuition.